Happy New Year, and thanks for joining us for another edition, Tuesday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service. Up first on the hazardous weather graphic, high wind warning continues here for southern southeast coast, away from Stewart and Hyder over there, but for Heidelberg, Klawock, Craig, and I believe Ketchikan and Annette has still under the influence of high wind warning until 9 p.m. this evening. Otherwise, and until then, wind gusts of 40 to 60 miles per hour will continue until that front finally pushes on to the east. And up to the north, got high wind warning out until, or for this evening, here for the Alaska Range for south winds gusting to 60 miles an hour, above 60 miles per hour. And then wind advisories there on the lower elevations of the north side of the range. And that's out for mainly this evening, ending later on this evening. And clicking to the next map here, we've got winter storm warnings out for this evening here for the mid-Yukon Valley area for continued snow and blowing snow. And then this area up through here, Galena up to Bettles, Ambler, eastward on up to Arctic Village. That winter storm warning is out through tomorrow, through Wednesday. 3 to 6 inches additional snow. Some areas could see up to 9 additional inches with pretty gusty west-southwest winds blowing. Snow will reduce visibility considerably. Then winter weather advisories for this evening for the Tanana area and on up into the upper Yukon Valley. And then also for this evening continuing here for the Seward Peninsula, Shishmaref, eastward in toward the Nulato Hills, and then those will end after midnight. Moving on to satellite imagery, here was the third of a series of storms tracking northward, each one tracking a little farther to the east than the previous one. And this one is pulling northward here, crossing just about right over King Salmon, weakening now as it moves into the interior after bottoming out at about 956 millibars overnight last night. And some pretty gusty winds coming in with that. AKwx gusts 62 miles an hour, and wind gusts again turning an arm last night, 80 miles an hour or so around McHugh Creek. And anyway, that's pushing moisture up into the interior, the front pushing into the panhandle, giving the gusty winds there, 40 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts through much of the southeast coast today from north to south. And Cape Spencer seeing gusts 67 miles per hour and as much as 3 inches of rain, close to 3 inches of rain falling at Ketchikan, and Juneau picking up just under 2 inches of rain, and Hoonah about 1.5 inches. So pretty widespread, moderate amounts of rain and gusty winds there with a high wind warning ending. Here you can see once the front still off the coast here, and that'll be moving through tonight, and then the wind warnings will end. This low lifting northward. And this third in the series, this is the last one, and it's usually the last in the series, pulls the cold air in, and that's just what's happening here. It's pulling the Arctic air back westward here. Rain changing to snow on Alaska, snow all day over the Pribilof Islands. Once again, a mixture here along the Alaska Peninsula. Snow and blowing snow, falling temperatures on the increase here for the southwest coast today. And really not a whole lot of precipitation, but some areas of widespread area light snow associated with this under that cloud shield, mostly away from the Alaska Range, more up toward the Brooks Range there. And then cold air covering the western Bering Sea on down to the Aleutians, temperatures falling into the 20s here for the central and western Aleutians with snow showers. And rolling that again, you can see that cutting up. Actually, looks like it was just east of King Salmon, right up along the Aleutian Range, very close though, and falling apart as it moves into the interior areas. And high clouds overspreading the Brooks Range and the North Slope. On the chart, here's that low center this afternoon, about 3 p.m., up to 964 millibars. Still pretty good, moderate low anyway at that, with some gusty southerly winds. Up to southeast here, higher elevation seeing the strongest wind gusts, of course, but anyway, snow and blowing snow behind or west of the Alaska Range on the increase this afternoon, as I mentioned, with a swath here from St. Matthew Island down across the Pribilof, pushing into the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. This trough here, kind of the leading edge of that colder air. And then the Arctic air locked in out to the west with snow showers, winds lighter, temperatures falling into the 20s out there. Areas of fog and flurries along the Arctic coast, Kaktovik down to a quarter mile at times in light snow and fog. Fog around Barrow much of the day, and then some flurries and fog over at Point Lay. and Cape Lisburne, seeing gusts to about 40 miles an hour to the northeast with temperatures just above zero. And a few flurries through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island. And then this front and the wind and the rain over the Panhandle. And rain Yakutat, but just to the north, any elevation get mixed with snow, and maybe some of that working in toward the Wrangell Mountain areas. But lee side of the Alaska Range, not much, just a narrow band of light snow passing up into the area, mostly enhancing over the White Mountains, and it will again here along the Brooks Range. For tonight, you can see this low continues to weaken. Snow showers, areas of light snow here. Some of that will spread back into Cook Inlet later tonight. Snow showers along the Alaska Peninsula, northeast Bristol Bay. Snowfall levels drop to sea level. Kodiak Island with some snow showers, although the bulk of the moisture already off to the west. This front moves inland, conditions improve. Showers or periods of light rain and showers much lighter for the Panhandle, as well as a big drop off in the wind speeds. Snow up to the northeast there, dry back to the west. Chance of flurries skipping the Arctic coast. Out in the west, cold, low pressure, snow showers scattered across much of the area, kind of enhanced along each one of these weak troughs I've drawn in there, kind of circulating out low like a pinwheel. And for tomorrow, weak high pressure builds in over the southwest interior. Colder temperatures, clearing skies go along with that. Just to the north, they're coming over the top. Snow showers, clouds, widespread area of light snow now from the Arctic coast across the North Slope, Brooks Range, Koyukuk, Upper Yukon Valley, right down into the Fairbanks area. This low kind of kicking a band of snow from southwest to northeast tonight through Cook Inlet. That'll be exiting the Susitna and eventually the Matanuska Valley, although that may take till late afternoon to end in the Palmer area up towards Sheep Mountain. Kind of a snowy day for the Copper River Basin. Rain and snow showers along the North Gulf Coast, and showers really tapering off over the southern and mid part of the Panhandle. Colder temperatures, could see some snow down to Haines, Skagway, maybe Juneau. And for the outlook on Wednesday, high pressure continues to expand and dry things out here, as well as temperatures falling. Much colder air back below zero here through the interior, except east and south of the Alaska Range, staying above zero. Band of snow here, southern Cook Inlet, Kachemak Bay, and Kamishak Bay, and scattered snow showers over the Panhandle. That pattern all the way up over the eastern interior to more of a light snow condition for the North Slope and the Arctic coast. And snow showers, eastern Aleutians, pretty good area of snow back into the Pribilofs up to St. Matthew Island, maybe St. Lawrence Island. Next system spreading some snow or snow and rain mixed. Really not all that strong out over the western Aleutians. Lows tonight near zero for the North Slope, but really dropping here. That colder air coming southeastward, 15 below around St. Lawrence Island, 20 for the Pribilofs, mid-20s, lower 30s for the eastern Aleutians, still lower 30s here for south central Alaska, and upper 30s to lower 40s for the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow, not much higher. In fact, the highs will occur earlier in the day. Temperatures fall into 20s into the afternoon here for south central Alaska, a little above zero on the Arctic coast, well below zero St. Lawrence Island. And moving on to the lows the following morning, down into the 10 to 15 range, south central Alaska, below zero north and west of the Alaska Range. Highs, single numbers through much of the interior, teens for south central Alaska.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to aviation graphics here, IFR from the Aleutian Range, right up the Alaska Range. Maybe lower conditions over the northern Kuskokwim Valley, and then back down along the Kuskokwim River there to the bay, and northward here to the Brooks Range, a lot of IFR North Slope Arctic coast, and down across the Talkeetnas and over to the Wrangels, otherwise the Panhandle IFR over toward the border. And in the afternoon, improving here, some VFR over Prince of Wales Island, maybe to Port Alexander, and some IFR lingering up there around Lynn Canal. IFR over the Wrangell Mountains, marginal North Gulf Coast of Prince William Sound. Pretty low conditions here north of the mountains all the way up to the eastern and central Arctic coast, and VFR breaking out over the southwest interior. And Nunivak Island, marginal for the Pribilofs, Alaska Peninsula. VFR, Fox Islands to about Atka, then back to marginal. And for the following morning, we've got IFR here from the, Koyukuk and part of the Kobuk Valley on up across Brooks Range, North Slope out to the Arctic. And marginal VFR southeastward in the Copper River Basin to the North Gulf Coast, and more marginal VFR here, Bristol Bay, Shelikof Strait in the Alaska Peninsula, except False Pass, King Cove look to be VFR, with marginal VFR here for the Fox Islands and get some IFR out toward the western Aleutians. And for the afternoon, Thursday, good VFR here, northern Bering Sea, Chukchi Sea, Kotzebue Sound, right on down into the North Gulf, or the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound area, and the Panhandle. Some marginal VFR, Kodiak Island up into southern Cook Inlet and across northern Bristol Bay out to the Kuskokwim Delta, southern Yukon Delta, and much of the Bering Sea, all of the Aleutians, some IFR way out there to the west, and VFR for St. Lawrence Island, VFR for the southeast coast. Passes Anaktuvuk tomorrow, IFR. Should be a little better, go marginal for Adigan, and for Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR improving to marginal throughout the day, and for Rainy, marginal VFR, windy, marginal VFR could become IFR, some moisture slides in from the west or west-northwest there, and Isabel, marginal VFR, same thing, going IFR in the latter part of the day, but Mintasta, optimistically, I'll keep it VFR, could be some marginal stuff showing up, maybe touching the southern entrance or off to the southwest, but generally should be pretty good. Tanita, marginal VFR, and that trends toward IFR, again, as some moisture slides eastward. And then for Portage, marginal VFR, and Chilcoot and White, another IFR kind of day. And for the freezing levels, colder air out here to the west, coming eastward here, so that's pushed the surface down south of the Aleutians here, east of Kodiak, up along the eastern North Gulf Coast, cutting through the Panhandle, and then you're still about 4,000 to 6,000 feet here from the central southeast coast down across Dixon Entrance. And for icing, could be some isolated areas of considerable moderate here along the North Gulf Coast, Yakutat. Otherwise, that's about it. That's about the heaviest icing you may find tomorrow, above about 5,000 feet. Another swath of some light stuff here over the western interior on up to the eastern Arctic coast. Jet stream trough swinging through tomorrow with that moisture I spoke of here earlier across south central southern Alaska. Otherwise, kind of a split flow here, higher pressure trying to develop up there northwest off the Arctic coast. But the main jet well to the south now cutting in across the Queen Charlottes tomorrow, so even south of the Panhandle. 9,000-foot winds looking like this, 20 to maybe 35 knots here across the southeast coast. But not too bad, and then some stronger winds coming across the southern Alaska Range, Kodiak Island, the Barrens, up to 40 knots there, and a swath of west-southwesterlies 25 to 30 through the central interior, lighter for the North Slope and Arctic coast of that upper low system out there to the west, maybe 30 to 40 knot winds with this feature. Otherwise, 20 to 25 turns southerly here, weak high pressure developing over Bristol Bay, and coming down to 3,000 feet. There's that system hanging out to the west there. 25 to 30 knot winds with that over the western Aleutians. Pretty light here, some ridging, Bristol Bay up towards St. Lawrence Island, but the low and the high gradient there, westerlies 25 to 30 knots here through the interior, and about 35 knots across Kodiak. Light winds on the Arctic coast, and the Panhandle 15 to 25 at worst. And for turbulence, could be a little bit of light to isolated moderate chop there over the central southeast coast. Otherwise, look for considerable moderate southern Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, Ketchimak Bay down across Kodiak Island, and the Aleutian Range. Also up here over the interior with that west-southwest wind flow. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Technology. It's the rhythm of our everyday life. We're more dependent on satellite and communication systems than at any other time in history. Disruptions can affect our economy and even our safety. To prepare for the effects of such events and minimize impacts, we need to look outside our atmosphere, some 93 million miles away, at a star we call the Sun. It's our main energy source. It warms the Earth and grows our food. While the Sun and the space between may seem pleasant from our perspective, it's anything but peaceful. At its surface exists a chaotic state of eruptions and radiation. And unlike Vegas, what happens at the Sun doesn't stay at the Sun.
Space weather is essentially emissions from the Sun radiation, magnetic field that erupts from the solar surface, pumped out into space, sometimes right towards Earth. When it impacts the Earth, it impacts our technology. That's what we call space weather.
These solar events and their effects at Earth can disrupt systems we take for granted. From causing blackouts to the power grid, to delaying offshore drilling operations due to inaccurate GPS data. Interference with communication systems can force air traffic to reroute and impact rescue response and coordination. Outside our atmosphere, solar radiation can harm astronauts and the systems they depend on. The good news is that these eruptions can be detected early. Forecasters at the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center in Boulder, Colorado, have their eyes on the sun at all times.
The Space Weather Prediction Center is part of the National Weather Service and is very much like a normal weather forecast office. We're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're looking at data, we're looking at imagery, we're looking at model outputs. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches of imminent activity to our customers so they can take action.
In many ways, forecasting space weather is a lot like forecasting hurricanes. Those who rely on space weather forecasts, like electric power grid managers, are informed early on and can begin taking protective action.
When we see an eruption on the sun, space weather forecasters will issue a watch. This is much like a hurricane watch. When a hurricane sits offshore of Miami, for example, perhaps 48 hours out, we too can see way in advance that something may be coming towards the Earth.
As the storm moves toward us, it hits a monitoring spacecraft orbiting 1 million miles away from Earth.
It's kind of our buoy sitting out there offshore, and that hurricane, about 30-45 minutes before it makes landfall, we'll get the measurements from the buoy. That's what this spacecraft does for us. That big eruption that left the sun hits the spacecraft. Now we've got the measurements of exactly what's going to impact us here on Earth, and we issue the warnings to give the power grid a heads up that the storm is now imminent. An interesting element to this whole process is that when the forecasters issue the alert, the power grid receives the alert, takes the necessary actions to protect the grid, and the average citizen never knows anything ever happened.
The number of customers who rely on space weather information continues to grow. As our reliance on technology increases, so will our need for constant monitoring of the sun.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
GPS has changed society. Most people don't realize how remarkable and how many different applications there are.
The GPS has become an integral part, not just of our daily lives as far as cell phones and guidance for our cars and mapping, but the whole system in agriculture is really relying heavily on high accuracy GPS.
So they're using GPS to plant those seeds with centimeter accuracy. And then they can come behind it and irrigate and fertilize right where that seed is with that 1 centimeter accuracy.
The GPS creates a line for the operator that he can steer along, or you go to another level and the operator doesn't steer anymore and the tractor has an automatic steering system on it, much like a cruise control on a car, except for when I push the button, it doesn't drive a set speed. When I push a button, it stays on a predefined line.
You don't even need lights. You can do it at nighttime. You program your GPS and it's driving that tractor for you. So it's huge, and it's changing the way that the farmers farm the fields.
6 or 7 days out.
There's an interest in GPS applications from space weather side because when the sun is eruptive, it causes GPS to falter, and in some cases it doesn't work at all.
Productivity may suffer to a certain degree in that there's no way that I as a human being can steer as good 8 hours a day as a GPS system's going to do. It's going to be the same all day long. Some of the other application technologies, those are going to be gone. We're not going to have the ability to do good section control on sprayers and planters and fertilizer applicators without GPS.
We see a huge growing customer base in so many different industries, so many different sectors now relying on GPS and high precision GPS. They're all big customers for us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis, about the biggest change we've seen in the overall sea ice occurred in northern Cook Inlet here, where just about much of the ice disappeared, melted, vanished due to the warmer conditions, Chinook winds we've had, especially in Turnagain Arm where the winds have been so strong for the last 3 days. Coastal water forecast, southwest 20-25 knots on the south coast, westerlies 25 on the north coast, south 25 gusts 40 in Lynn Canal tomorrow, and south 25 knots for Stevens Passage. Lighter winds for Clarence Strait, south 15. And for Thursday, kind of a more variable wind pattern here at about 15 knots over the central and northern inside waters. Clarence Strait north at 20. 25 knots here on the south coast, and northwest 20, central coast turning west at 20 with 14-foot seas up north. Prince William Sound, southwest 25, small craft advisory 0 with 4-foot seas. Gale warnings out for the North Gulf Coast, 35 to 40 knot winds, west 40 for the Barrens, Kamishak Bay, southern Cook Inlet, west 40 knots, southwest 25 for northern Cook Inlet. Much lighter winds on tap for Thursday, northeast at 10 here for northern Cook Inlet, north 15 south of the Forelands. Northwest breeze at about 15 for Kamishak Bay, west 20 for the Barrens, 25 knot westerlies, western North Gulf Coast. And then we've got 15 to 20 knot winds here coming out of Bristol Bay right in down toward Middleton Island. For Kodiak Island tomorrow, westerlies 35 to 40 knots with 35 knot winds all the way back to Castle Cape out of the west, west 30 Bristol Bay. Alaska Peninsula, southwest 25 knots, seas 11 to 14 feet. And then for Thursday, northeast 15. 2-foot seas there for Bristol Bay, otherwise southwest 15 here for the peninsula. West 20 from Castle Cape to Sitkinak. Much lighter winds here at Kodiak Island for Thursday with westerlies at 15, 4 to 7-foot seas. Fox Islands tomorrow, southwest 25 here for Unalaska Island, west 15 to 20 for Woonmak Island. Adak and Atka, southwest 20 to 25 knots, and west 25 there from Kiska on out to Shemianat. For Thursday, southwest 20 here for the western zones up to about Adak, southwest 15 to 20. Much uniform wind pattern, a very uniform wind pattern now for the entire Aleutian chain here, 15 to 20 knots, all out of the southwest, with seas running anywhere from 6 to 9 feet. And for the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, east 20 tomorrow, northwest 20 for the Pribilof, southeast 20 for St. Matthew Island, west 20 to 25, St. Lawrence Island blowing into Norton Sound. And back to, and then for Thursday, east 20 for Norton Sound, east 25 for St. Lawrence Island, south to southeast here, only 15 knots along the southwest coast, light southeasterly winds for the Pribilofs, about 20 knots from the southeast for St. Matthew Island. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, far eastern area toward demarcation point, east 20, northeast 15 to 20 here for the central coast, diminishing as you head west, east 10 on the west side, swinging around to the west, south of Cape Beaufort, and picking up to about 20 knots from Cape Thompson to Wales out of the west. And then south 10, real light winds to the Chukchi Sea here, at least from Wales up to Cape Thompson on Thursday. Southwest 20, pick up to brisk wind advisory levels there in the west side. Otherwise, for the remainder of the coast, central and east side, southwest at 20, becoming a little more variable here to the east. And for tonight, again, this low continues to track northward and slowly weaken. So along that front that swings up to the Brooks Range, got winter storm warnings out here from around the low center up to the northeast there, otherwise ending over the areas north of the Alaska Range tonight. High wind warning ends for the Alaska Range this evening. And winter weather advisories also end later this evening here for the southwest interior. Still have some drifting snow, kind of breezy, colder temperatures, more snow showery. Alaska Peninsula snowfall levels back down to sea level. Rain and snow showers are the trough. Some of that will kick up into Cook Inlet, and lots of snow showers out over the Bering Sea and to the Aleutians. High wind warning until 9 p.m. for the southern panhandle, specifically Prince of Wales Island, gusts over 60. You can see after midnight that front's well to the east, lighter precipitation, lighter winds in store for those areas. And for tomorrow, Wednesday, widespread area light snow here as upper level low pressure along with a surface feature begins to set up here over the interior. And snow ending Cook Inlet with downsloping colder temperatures coming in off the Alaska Range. And then for Wednesday, much colder here over the interior areas with clearing, high pressure, chance of snow, north slope on out to the Arctic coast, snow showers scattered across eastern interior down into the northern panhandle, and areas of snow out to the west. Let's look at the weather. Thanks so much for joining us and have a great new year.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.